He wants you too, Malachai. He wants you too.
What's the goodness?
That's not the fact. That was.
No more room in hell. The dead will walk here.
Hey, and welcome to Three Corners of Horror. If this is your first time watching, I am Joe, the psychologist. I'll be the moderator for tonight. We're one man down. He'll be back next week. But for tonight, let me introduce you to my brother, JR. How you doing?
Gonna go back in time to a classic, man. I think they should rename this movie to like a doctor that can't make a good fucking call.
Damn. I'm already starting to feel bad for the movie. And joining us is Radar Steele. Radar, what's going on? How are you doing?
Pretty good, man. Thanks for having me aboard to talk about this to-be-worthy movie. That's where it deserves to be.
Oh no! I feel like I'm gonna be the odd man out here for some reason. All right.
Ain't no butter in this corn, man.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Well, you heard the word corn. It was the first in what's going to be a yearly trend we're going to have going, where we're going to be revisiting these basically classic movies, I guess for maybe me, maybe not so others. And well, for this one, we're going to be discussing the 1984 movie Children of the Corn. The movie is directed by Fritz Kirsch. It's written by Stephen King and George Goldsmith, and it stars Peter Horton as Burt, Linda Hamilton as Vicky, not so much the, Sarah Connor, but okay, and Courtney Gaines as Malachai. A young couple on their way to an internship stop at a remote town. Stop, or were they led there? Were a religious cult of children who believe that everyone over 18 must be killed. All right, so this is actually because I was looking, I've read Stephen King's book, and I'm like, I don't think I ever read this book, but this is based on a short story, from my understanding. All right, so I'm right. And this movie has had so many sequels. JR, unfortunately attempted to watch the remake. Thankfully, he told us how bad it was. Yeah. I'm not going to bother checking it out. But yeah, this movie came out in 1984. I'm like the old fogey here. So, Radar, were you even born yet?
No.
Holy crap. So, Radar is going to give, his take on this movie that he saw well after, he was born. Whereas, JR and I were actually around when the movie came out. So, Radar, when did you first see this movie?
Yeah, I first stumbled across this like when I was first kind of getting into horror, because I don't understand, but like around that sort of time period, around the mid 2000s, this movie was like getting big again because I kept seeing it everywhere. People just talking about it. And so I wanted to watch it. So I was around 9 or 10, and I finally watched it, which finally, still pretty young. But I remember it having an impact at the time and going like, whoa, this movie fucking rocks. Because I was 10. And then revisiting say, 10 or 11 years later, I was like, wait a minute. This might have lost some of its luster. But I remember it being good enough to where I was like, yeah, this is a solid film when I watched it. And it kept me on watching more horror films. So at the very least, it helped me along in my horror journey.
See, and I had thought you were gonna say that too, because when I knew I was gonna ask, I'm like, I don't think Radar was born when this movie came out. I'm like, but I bet you he's gonna have the, the story about how you were young, because this came out in '84. So I was 12, JR was 9. So JR saw it the same age you saw it, just 40 years ago.
A little bit of a gap.
A little bit. That's a huge ass gap for well, JR, I mean, same thing. Like, what were your, do you remember when you first saw it, what you first thought? And obviously towards the end we'll discuss if this movie, but like going back 40 years ago. Do you remember your thoughts on the movie?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those movies where, like, Stephen King was big in the 80s, and a lot of his movies were coming out. And, we were a fan of the Stephen King movies. So this is one of the ones, like, just because it had Stephen King on it, like, all right, let's watch it. While it didn't age well, I would say there's two characters in this film that still kick ass, even after all these years. We'll talk about them later. But, yeah, it's just like even watching it as a 9-year-old, I was still thinking, man, this doctor is really a dumbass. Because Jesus Christ, it's mostly in horror movies where the woman is like, hey, let's go explore this, let's go explore this. No, it was this dumb fucker, and he just kept doing it. But yeah, it was it's gonna be an interesting conversation because there's still some good things in this film, and unfortunately, like, the remake was so bad that it didn't do anything justice. And I wish that the remake would have kind of pushed a little bit of the two characters that we're going to talk about later, because it didn't. And it was just, it's kind of bad when the remake makes the original look so much better.
Not a good sign.
And that's what happened with Firestarter.
Oh,
so,
God.
Ooh,
yeah,
I haven't seen that one either.
That's happened with Firestarter. Don't bother. Don't
Unless
bother.
you're
Just watch.
bored out of your mind.
Watch. If you feel like you want to watch Firestarter, just watch Drew Barrymore's.
Yeah, watch the original first.
Oh yeah, that one's good. That one's actually good. So
I like that one too. Still, I mean, I know it didn't age all that well either, but
wow.
I mean, for me, like I said, I saw this also when it came out, and back then I thought it was scary. The thought of these kids, and as JR said, Stephen King was big. I was reading Stephen King's book by that time, so same reason I wanted to see the movie, because Stephen King's attached to it, and remembered it being scary. I actually, for some reason, remembered Isaac being scarier, and I can admit it's probably been, well, shit, I'm gonna go probably more than 20 years since the last time I saw this movie, because when I watched it with Adam, he was like, God, I can't remember when was the last time I saw this movie. And I'm like, we've been together for 20 years. So it's been over 20 years. And rewatching it, you're like, okay, well, it's not so scary. Malachai, still, I remember him being scary. But as you said, there were just so many dumb decisions made along the way. One of my favorite, not favorite, but just as far as kind of what JR is saying. So when the doctor's running and he trips, and I'm like, well, somebody had to trip in this movie. Like, it's normally, as the trope, the woman running that falls. So here's the doctor, he's got good speed and then trips. I'm like, well, all right. So of course he's going to fall. And it drove me nuts that the motherfucker would not pick up a weapon, and then when he finally did pick up a weapon, he dropped it. Matter of fact, when he finally did use it, he actually didn't use it the way he should have used it. And I'm sitting like, oh my God, this guy's just an idiot. And when they're driving into town, when he made that deduction on how far they were now to, it was a Gatlin, how far they were in, and how the other town was supposed to be this many miles away. Couldn't you have fucking done that math like before you were 2 miles into the town? You see what I'm saying? Like, it's literally like you came up with that as your. Why didn't you come up with that when all of a sudden it's like 10 miles? You're like, well, no, it's supposed to be. Let me turn around now, but let me just keep going, and because somebody fucked with these signs. That was the thought. So yeah, and Linda, when she's screaming, calling for Bert, and I'm like, why do people, you know, if you're in a strange house, don't call out for people. Don't let people know where you're at, especially if you just walked into this creepy town where your husband left you the car so he can go search the town. So what good's the car gonna do for her? He honked the horn, and what? You're gonna run back? I mean, so yes, a lot of dumb decisions were done. But as we get when the movie starts, we're actually introduced to Job and Sarah, and then we are introduced to our antagonist here, which is Malachi and Isaac. So I'm gonna go, to you, JR, first. Like, what were give me, like, as far as Sarah, what'd you think of the Sarah girl? Because, as with Stephen King, you had a child with some sort of psychic powers. And then Malachi and Isaac.
Sarah I liked her character because, not for nothing, you got these two kids who are literally like nonchalant. 1 minute they're like in the bedroom drawing, next minute they're hiding in this little bunker they have. And, the fact is, when the husband's running around in town and he trips over, it's the Job that basically rescues him. Basically, calls him a punk. Hey, follow me, stop being scaredy cat. And hey, you got a little kid taunting you. Just how it shows you how dumb this doctor is. But
yeah,
I wish there was more with Sarah, because I know in the remake they did give Sarah a little. Well, the character was supposed to be Sarah, as far as her gift of, foreshadowing.
I'm gonna call it The Shining. I mean, because it seems to be in the Stephen King universe that
it seems similar.
Anything psychic is somehow tied to The Shining. So she was tapped into The Shining.
And the fact that she was gifted to the point where Isaac was willing to bend the rules for her, because he kind of needed her, because in reality, I felt like she was the one that forewarned him about a lot of stuff, and he would use her in order to basically warn the others and preach. The Isaac character is an interesting one, because I like and this is what got me a little bit pissy with the movie, is they give you a little small background about him. Everything was good until Isaac came. He was the son of a pastor, so he was always preaching. I kind of liked it. I was like, man, I would love to know more about the Isaac character. And what I figured towards the end of it was that, while he was a very dominating character, when he screams,
oh my god,
that scream had me going. I started laughing,
man.
He beat my scream. When I heard that scream, I felt better about myself.
Yeah, I rewinded it 3 times just to make sure I was hearing it right. But
yeah,
that's what a weird redub. Oh wait,
no.
No.
But the Malachi character was the most interesting, the one that really drew every scene he was in, because here you have the enforcer, the muscle, who just happened to be a redhead, which poor gingers at those times, like they weren't picked on enough.
Yeah,
we're gonna make the toughest boy. We're gonna just make him a ginger.
Jared, no joke. Sorry to interrupt you. When I was taking a shower before I'm like sitting there, and I thought, and I in my head go, dude, poor redheads during the 80s that had the long hair. Yes. Like, everyone was gonna go Malachi. Like, no girl was probably gonna want to date them. I had the same thought that you just said, like literally before we taped.
But he was good. I liked him. I really liked the Malachi character. Isaac and Malachi basically, they carried most of this movie. Let's be honest. It was just them two. Their relationship, how awkward it was, because you knew, spoiler, that Malachi wasn't too fond of all of Isaac's decisions, because Isaac wasn't as strict as Malachi was. And one scene in particular where the husband strolls into the church and you got poor, what was his name? Was it Anton?
Amos.
Amos. Aim is sitting there looking like shocked, but and then the girl's like, "Oh, get Isaac." No, never mind. Get Malachi. Everybody's like, "Ooh!" I was like, "Yeah, come
Yeah.
Malachi." But yeah, I mean, the Malachi Isaac character, which I think if there was to decide to do a different type of remake, I mean, I would focus around them two because that would be interesting if you actually do it into a series based on Isaac and Malachi. But yeah, those two characters definitely carry the movie.
All right, Radar. Your thoughts on the three?
I mean, I gotta agree with JR because when there's like big stretches of time where I watch this movie because as we've stated, you don't really have to watch this movie every year.
No.
You shouldn't.
I
Let's
get
be real.
if you haven't, you at least add it to your repertoire.
At least watch it.
What? This is the only Children of the Corn you should watch.
Oh yeah.
We'll just pretend like there's no other ones that exist, even though there's like 20 more. But
I did see 2, 3, and 4, so I'm not gonna lie. I'm a completionist, man. I like to watch. I have to watch sequels. I put myself through hell for that. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's definitely one way to call it hell. But yeah, I mean, Isaac and Malachi are like the two characters that in between watches I even remember existing because then it seems like in my mind every other character just gets blurred out into like the Charlie Brown parents on the phone. When they pick up, it's just wah, wah, wah. I can't remember any of those lines. I can't remember what they look like. And it's just Isaac Malachi. That's all I can remember in between watches. I'm like, I don't think anyone else was in that movie. And I coming to find out, that I remember that Linda Hamilton's in it. And I was like, what? Mind blowing. Just because none of the other characters are memorable. I can't get by, except for what is the name of the mechanic character?
It was cool, man.
Deal. I think his name was Deal.
Yeah, I like Deal. Yeah. So, I mean, and Deal was, I think, the only other what a weird character, also a weird name, but he was the only other character that I remember because he just really stood out. Everyone else in this movie who has lines is, like the average age is like 14, and Deal's like 60. And just some weird auto mechanic. And that I think it's really his scene where he gets off, spoilers, is memorable too. So maybe that's why I also remember him, is because of that. But like the other characters kind of fade into the background. That the two kid leads are fine. I like one of them having those sort of like hint at powers, but not like too supernatural. But it really does say something when there's, a literal corn monster. Maybe, who knows? We don't ever see it. I'm going to pretend it's made out of corn though, but like a corn monster, and like Malachi is more intimidating than the corn monster for like most of the film.
Yeah,
that is very true. And I'm going to definitely agree with that. That Malachi character was the one that carried it. I mean, he was doing Isaac's bidding based on, he who walks behind the rows. So he definitely was the intimidating one. Same. I would have liked to seen just a little bit of flashbacks of, Isaac meeting the kids after, because I'm sure if his father was a preacher, that means that when they did Bible readings, he tried to be like his father and talk to the kids. You don't even have to go into full detail, but just like give it something like that. And then you would have Malachi, who, no shade, because it's kind of how it's done in movies, but being a redhead, kind of being an outcast, and Isaac taking him in, originally seeing the bond form between them, and then Malachi figuring out you're full of shit. I've been listening to you this whole time. As far as Sarah, and like I said, I'm gonna call it The Shining because I kind of feel like that's, a little, just not the full, but she's tapped into whatever it is that the people with psychic powers in the Stephen King universe have. She was probably feeding him everything beforehand, he probably wasn't speaking to the demon. He maybe did speak to the demon, but for the most part, he needed Sarah and would tell Sarah, "Hey, is there anything coming up? Or you got a drawing for me? Oh, all right." And then, everybody get together. She drew Burt and Vicky coming into town, and he's, basically used that to preach to everyone. And I mean, I don't know, if I was a kid in this town, I would probably try to do the same thing as the kid who tried to take off early in the movie. I probably would get off the same way too, but because somebody's got to stop and say, how the fuck are we going to feed ourselves? I mean, like the adults were, doing the farming. They were, they killed Deal because Deal's who was supplying them the gas and petroleum for whatever they're using it for. And Deal reminded me of Judd, from Pet Sematary. Like, I felt like it was the obligatory old guy, to show up in a Stephen King movie. And like his scene, what was memorable is because even though you didn't get to see him killed, I like the scenes where the kids are coming in and their weapons are falling into the frame, and you're basically seeing all these things they're going to use on poor Deal. And it's all kinds of shit. I mean,
it's wild.
Like at one point I'm like, is that Candyman's hook? I mean, I knew it wasn't. I don't know what they're called, but it is Candyman's hook. But it is one of the more memorable death scenes in the movie, even though you really don't get to see it. And then, of course, poor dog, like the dog got it, and that's why Deal got pissed off, because they killed his dog. But, it did look a little bit corny up when, he goes, come on, and he goes to run. Like it was gonna be like a Kill Bill type of fight that was about to happen with Deal and the kids. So that's the only thing that threw me off when he charged. I'm like, did he just charge? Like did this old man who had a hard time getting up from when he was working on the car decided I'm gonna charge? All right, so let's talk about what Radar kind of hinted that was supposed to be scary in the movie. I'm gonna say that when I was rewatching it, I had flashbacks to when JR and I did Warlock when it came to special effects. But he who walks behind the rose is supposedly who all the kids are listening to. When you turn 19, you give yourself, as a sacrifice to it's a demon, I'm assuming, which is what they kind of called it at some point towards the end. They referred to it as a demon. But because these kids were supposedly listening to what he was saying, should we have been given just a little bit more about, he who walks behind the rose? Radar, I'm going to go to you first on that one.
I mean, you guys know I love ambiguity in movies, so I'm all for them leaving he who walks behind the rose is just like a complete mystery, especially since they don't show him, because they would have definitely fucked that up with the budget they had.
Yeah,
but they did show him though.
Oh, did they? What? When?
Yeah, I'll let you finish. I'll let you finish. I'll tell you when they showed him.
I guess because I can't remember what he looks like if I do, but I will say sparingly for sure if they did show him. And it makes it's much better because again they didn't have the budget to really make him look good, but like hiding him in the corn, making sure that no one really saw him, and that the only chance you really did get to see his power was shooting Isaac into the air like a firecracker. It's memorable. It's great. I think they did
popcorn at that point.
They did what they needed to do. Like they executed that part pretty well, I will say. So I think they used that demon corn thing correctly, as opposed to half of the other stuff in the movie.
What about you, JR?
Yeah, I didn't mind that they didn't show him because I mean, the times they show him he's moving underneath the dirt, I thought it was pretty cool. It was different. It was unique. I mean, kind of reminded me of Tremors a little bit. So I was like, is that a big worm under there? But I know Tremors wasn't, there. But I didn't mind that. I mean, I agree with Radar. For me, it was more about Isaac and Malachai, and He Who Walks Rose was basically in the background. So for me, I didn't mind at all. I like the whole subtlety. I mean, with all the power he has, though, you figure if there's a fire in the cornfields, he would have did a U-turn and went the other way. But he didn't, which leads to the scene that Joe's about to explain.
Because when you see the fire and the flames go up, at some point in time, his face appears on there going, as he's being burned away.
Oh my gosh, I completely forgot about that.
Yes, because when as you guys said, or JR said, it's kind of, he's underground. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
So for me, I would have been okay if it would have been that Isaac had this book that spoke. Like maybe just because they never, like, for me, like, why all of a sudden, like, there was no reason why this is who he was preaching to these kids who they're all listening to. So if maybe there was some kind of Bible that he found, I would have been just okay with maybe that little bit of a tidbit. But yeah, when he's basically knocking down the pipes that is, spewing all the gas. So you could have gone around. you literally banged into the pipes because you saw that it's like they shook and then they shook again and then broke. So you weren't getting through the first 2 times, and then the third time you break this pipe and you didn't smell the gasoline that's now coming around you. But when they burned him up and I saw the face, I'm like, it just brought me back to when Warlock was transported to the future in that little tornado, and same thing when he was whatever light they were using that basically took over Isaac. I was like, but this is where you discuss how sometimes movies don't age well because of these special effects they do. But there are other movies that came around during this time, and we'll be bringing those up also, that actually had good special effects. So yeah, that would be my only thing. I would have liked if there was like some sort of artifact or something that led to the reason that Isaac now created this freaking church of kids who shit, honestly, that's a sucky life. So you have to be a kid, and then just at 19 you got to off yourself.
Yeah.
Like, remember too, and then Isaac was rewriting the Bible because that was brought up during the church scene where he was changing the words, so he was creating his own Bible in the process.
Well, good, because then I'm sitting there going, so who's going to be left at the end here? Yeah. Your church is based on you got to sacrifice at 19. So if you're the last one left, do you go, well, shit, there's no one here to stop me?
Well, Isaac probably kept lying about his age.
I'm out. Well,
did I say 18? I meant I was 12. I'm 12.
That's true too, because Isaac did look a little bit older, and I feel a little bad, because it's not mocking, but I think with the hat on, I don't know, I kind of thought a little bit of a Oompa Loompa. I know I feel bad for saying that. I do, but it's just kind of what I saw when I saw him. All right, guys. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap this one up. Again, it's 40 years ago this movie came out. Obviously, did it hold up? Any last thoughts, Radar?
I will say that there are 2 scenes in this movie that do hold up, and it's the first scene where they do that whole like wipeout of the adults in the diner. That's cool. That's great. I wish the rest of the movie was like that.
Yes.
Or at least close to that level, but it wasn't. But that scene was good. And then when Malachai is going around the town, and just screaming, Outlander! Outlander, we have your woman, Outlander. That scene's great. But again, that's because Malachai is just carrying it.
That's true. Even though I will say that when he was screaming Outlander, it made me think of the Warriors. And when the guy was trying to call them out and going,
the
Warriors. Yeah, so sorry. JR, what about you?
You know,
Oh, wait, hold on. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, rate it.
You didn't rate it, Radar.
Oh, shoot. Cardinal Sin. You know, it has its flaws for sure, but I can't hate on it either because it has stuff that it did well. So I think I'll be generous. I'm gonna give it a 2.5 out of 5. Straight middle. Writing mediocrity.
JR.
Well, speaking of that scene, the two scenes that Radar talked about, because while they were interesting scenes, there was some comedy in those scenes. Because, not for nothing, Job's dad, when they locked the door, he slammed my door. Everybody getting stabbed. This dude's like, I'm like, dude, you're a grown man. Take some of these kids out, man. They're killing people. You're just staying there. And then, like, they stab him in the back, and Job just looks at him, looks at Malachai. Like, I would have been like, thanks, Dad. I mean, Jesus Christ, you was. And then the other scene where he's screaming Outlander, this dude's in the basement and he can't even hear him. So he could have killed his wife, but he would not known about it.
No, that's very true. I didn't think about that part.
The whole time he's in the basement. Now let's talk about Burt real quick, because Burt is a freaking moron. Now they had a chance to leave the town, and what he does? Oh, look! I see a door just open. Let's just go by and see who's in there. And his wife's like, "No, let's go. No, I just want to see who's in there, dude. You're in the road to get the hell out of town. Go." That's one. Two is the end sequence when he gets in the car and the girl's behind and goes to attack him. He gets out the car. His wife smacks the door in the girl's head. He sits there. Oh, she's knocked out. What are we gonna do? Dude, get out!
Just try to kill you.
This dude for a doctor. Oh my god, I would not want to see this. I would not want to be his patient because this dude. And to top it off, when he's like, "All right, let's hook up these the hoses so we could flood, the cornfield with the gasoline." Oh, let me get a bottle. Let me get a rag. He throws the thing in. He can't even throw the freaking bottle.
The little kid even
Joe
said to him,
grabs it. Here, throw it again and throw it right this time.
Do it right.
Do it right this time.
I mean, it was just, there was some, like going back, there's some comedy in this that you don't realize it's comedy until you watch it again. But for me, I still think the Isaac and Malachai character were so, there was just something about them that you wanted to see more. And I think this is where, unfortunately, where you could tell this was based on a short story because there wasn't enough of a background story for those two characters. Like I was very interested in the fact that, Isaac came from a pastor, and they, Job even said it whenever Isaac talked, they believed him because of where he came, because he was the son of a pastor. So they figured he was right. The whole Malachai persona, yeah, like Joe said, he could have been the outcast in the small town. Everybody picked on him. They kind of remind me of the duo from Christmas Story. The two bullies.
Scott Furcus and his toady.
Think about it. One of them was short, wore the hat. The other one was tall, and he was a redhead.
It all makes sense.
Similarities. Now you know where they went after the Christmas Story. They went to freaking Gatlin and started their own cult. But I'm going to give it a 3 because I still think it could. Some areas of it holds pretty good. I mean, unfortunately, the Burt character is just dumb. Totally wasted Linda Hamilton. I mean, her scenes were just like, man. I mean, girl, you became Sarah Connor, and then here, hello? Oh, look, somebody's feet. Who are you? And then you go run into the door, and then you don't even block the door.
No.
I mean,
or go out the window.
Or go out the window. And for me, like I said, if let's play what we always play. If we was to remake this one, like I said, I would focus more on the Isaac background first, and then bring in Malachai and base it off that. This is another Stephen King, movie that you could turn into either a trilogy or a series because, like me and Joe talked about when we reviewed Pet Cemetery Bloodlines, all the potential was there for a regular series, but they rushed it into a prequel, which didn't work. And if you're curious about the remake of this one, they turned it where the people who are trying to take over the cornfields are are big, like Monsanto type of people who just want to throw fertilizer and basically destroy the lands. That's the premise of the New Children Corps remake. A bunch of kids fighting big corporation. So don't watch it. It's a waste of time. But watch this one. This one's better. And like I said, the Isaac and Malachi character definitely carried this film.
All right. Before I give my closing thoughts and rate, how is Children of the Corn an outlier in the Stephen King universe?
An outlier.
I'm hoping to use the right word on that.
What do you mean? That's like based on a short story, or?
I'm not gonna get that. I gave my question. Think of Stephen King movies and books.
But they always say country. There's always a road that people don't go to leave.
So this took place in Nebraska instead of Maine.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Almost all of his stories. So this one and The Shining, because The Shining is Colorado, is outside of Maine. Because I was wondering when it first started, I'm like, are there cornfields in up north? I'm like, wait, we did walk through a cornfield. So they do have them. And then when they said Nebraska, I'm like, oh, that's right. This one doesn't take place in Maine. None of the signs, because I was looking to see if maybe one of the signs would have said Castle Rock or something to, give you the little Stephen King Easter egg, but they weren't there either for this one. So as far as my rate, it would be a 3, but because it's Stephen King, I'm gonna give it a 3.5. Because
sell out.
No, it's not sell out. I mean, and again, sometimes for me, I do try to put myself a little bit of the mindset of when I first saw the movie, because we're also used to the special effects and CGI. So I try to remind myself when this movie came out, we didn't have that technology. But then when you get to the scenes where, he who walks behind the rose is this bioluminescent blue and then it goes red. Oh God, that special effect did not age well. And I don't know, like I feel at this point with how bad all the other ones have done, if they should even bother remaking the movie and just leave it alone, but if they do, I'm not even. Thank you, JR, for telling me, because I still was curious on checking out the remake because I'm just that type of person. But I hate anything that has to do with pushing a message to me in a horror movie, especially. I can watch it in dramas and all the other stuff because that's what the story is about. But in a horror movie, we're just talking about like basically it should have been about children who were listening to some preacher and killing the adults. So for me, a series wouldn't be a bad idea, giving you the characters. I mean, we're gonna get Crystal Lake. Who knows if Crystal Lake does really well, that some other people are gonna go, hey, let's focus on these characters. I would throw Sarah in there also, because I feel that, as far as Isaac's power over everybody, Sarah had a lot to do with where he was getting his knowledge. So you would have to have her in there. And then also seeing that maybe Isaac liked the little girl too. Like he didn't want to kill her. She's a little girl because, while having to get his information from her, they bond. But yeah, again, like the rest of the movies were terrible. So don't watch those either. Honestly, just don't. Well, all right, guys, that does it for us tonight. Make sure to tune in next week. Not going to reveal what we're going to be talking about. I'll just give one hint. Well, we haven't done a sci-fi space horror in a long time.
Ooh.
So keep an eye out for that. JR, Radar, thanks for joining tonight. I am Joe the Psychologist. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Follow so you can get updates. Let us know what you thought of this movie, if it's still a favorite for you, or if you guys don't like it as much as these two. So until next time, ta-ta for now.